ready to find peace in the chaos this summer? Introducing Steadfast, the student's guide to battling anxiety. Hey, Fearless family, welcome back to Fearless Tips and Talks. We are in our Steadfast Series, which is a student's guide to anxiety, and we have Sydney back on the podcast today. Hey, if you have not heard Talk 24, Sydney Jones, Surrender and OCD, I'm telling you what, we had so many people reach out to us, DM, email, text. I mean, it was just like this, and even like months later, it was just people are getting a hold of the way that you explained what OCD looks like in your life was like mind-boggling for me. I thought it was just this particular way, and this is how OCD looked, but the way you explained it with intrusive thoughts and how that just kind of shook out in your life was incredibly powerful. So if you have not heard that interview, please go back and listen to that. But we've got Sydney back for a specific reason. First of all, she's graduated college, and we just want to woohoo! Like, yay. That's so fantastic. And you are interning, you're doing journalism right now, which is really great. And from the outside, it may look like, man, since the last time you were on this podcast, Sydney's got it all together and everything's going great. But the reality is things kind of fell apart after not that the podcast was the reason why things fell apart, but she really has it on her heart to talk about what does life look like when it's not what you want it to look like. And so I think I just want to, will you just catch us up? What happened since the last time we saw you? You did talk a lot about how your journey through counseling and getting proper medication that really helped was something that was just so powerful for you. And then something happened. So do you want to just catch us up?
Yeah, sure. It has been a journey since the last time I was on the podcast. At the time, like you said, it was all going great with medication and counseling and school, and everything was going super well. And then things started to shift a little bit. And I think mental health wise, my medication stopped working around Christmas time. And which is just a hard thing that's just a hard time for things to go wrong. First of all, you're just around so many people, and you're supposed to be happy because it's the holidays. And but I was having really intense mood swings, and my emotions were very numbed out. I'm a super emotional person. I've always kind of worn my heart on my sleeve, and I stopped really feeling things deeply. And I remember not feeling like myself at all. And I messaged my psychiatrist about it, and she was like, this is not like a normal thing. We definitely need to switch your medication, which I was a little bit sad about at the time because I had worked for a year to find something that really was successful for me. And it was going so well. And so I was like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. We're just going to switch to the next medication. And then I went through 2 different medications, and neither one was working for me. And the second one specifically was just super intense. I felt like I had the flu all the time. I was very dizzy. I couldn't drive to school. I had to email my professors and say, I won't be able to drive. I am super dizzy. It was very weird. I could barely take my dog outside to go to the bathroom because my brain was just so all over the places. It was very just off-putting and kind of scary, especially after experiencing such relief just a few months before. And so with that medication, I was like, well, this one's not going to work either. At that point, I had tried all of the most basic medications for OCD. So I was getting into the ones where you have to go get a heart echo and the symptoms get more and more intense. And a lot of people, say this one didn't work for me or this. And so my mind was just, I started to collect a lot of fear and anxiety over trying anything else. So I stopped the last medication, and upon the advice of my psychiatrist at the time, I just cold turkey cut it out, which now I see that's not a good thing to do. So if anyone ever tells you to do that, maybe get a second opinion from another psychiatrist or doctor, because I actually developed an antidepressant discontinuation syndrome where things just got more intense. I would say my symptoms doubled in intensity. And I was like, I feel like I'm dying, which I knew I wasn't, but it was so scary. And so I eventually figured that out. Within 3 months, I was off the medication, but it took 3 months to wean off of it. And then I was free of medication, which at the time, at first I was like, this is great. I don't need this. I'm going to be fine. It's just me and God together. And so he's going to make it all fine and everything's going to be okay. And then my OCD was back full force for the first time in, I think, 5 years.
And remind people what OCD looks like for you.
So OCD, I think traditionally people, which is totally understandable because it's not talked about a lot, they see it as organization and making sure that things are in the same place or repeating a certain action multiple times, which is the compulsion part of the OCD. It stands for obsessive compulsive disorder. So that compulsion part is, for some people it is, I have to organize this. I have to flip these lights on and off. I have to do all these things so that these bad things won't happen, or so that my anxiety will just decrease and go down. For me, my OCD has always looked like intrusive thoughts OCD. So, if you've ever had just a weird, scary, violent thought pop into your head and you're like, where did that come from?
And unwanted.
Yeah, just something pop in.
You would not choose that thought.
No, and you're like, okay, I was not meditating on that. I don't know how that just came into my head. A lot of people just say, that was weird, and they shove it away. And somebody with OCD cannot do that. So they turn that thought into almost a personality. You are those bad things. You are that kind of bad person who wants to harm others or yourself, or wants to do bad things. And I think that whole idea was terrifying to me.
And so just to set the stage, sorry for interrupting. I was just thinking, for someone that for 4 years had been cleared of that and was not having those obsessive thoughts anymore, because you were doing the hard work in therapy, because you were on the medication that was working, and because you were spiritually making sure that you were in God's word and taking care of yourself, all of a sudden to be like, boom, it's back, that had to be like, what is happening now? Like, what is going on? And I think there's something I just want to press into. Medication is such a tricky situation, and medication is a gift from God. And I think when you get to a place of like where Sydney was at, where she is just numb, not feeling anything, kind of zoned out, not really living the way that she, like your personality was gone. I think it's important for parents and teachers and coaches and people that just all of a sudden see their student just boop, gone. Like there's something going on there. And I'm grateful for your story, because medication shouldn't numb you out so much that you're not who God's made you to be. Medication is a tool to help you get through and over the things that are ailing you, right? And so I guess I feel grateful that you were at a place where you're like, I'm not myself. Something's not right. This had been great for 4 years, and then all of a sudden something isn't right. So I don't know. I felt like we needed to just press into that for a moment. And so now you're at the situation where you're getting ready to try a new medication to help with the compulsive, unwanted, not cool thoughts that are coming into your head. And what happens?
So I remember having a meeting with my psychiatrist one evening, and I had just decided to start medication again after I think 3 or 4 months off of it. And it had gotten to the point where I was like, I think my OCD is at the level where personally my brain needs medication right now to function the way that it is supposed to. And so I was like, I would love to not have to take medication, but that's just not where I'm at. And so that was a hard reality. I think I was almost excited to get off of it because I was like, well, I'm just going to prove to everyone that I don't need this. And I've done so much work, and God has changed my life so much that I don't need this and I can do it myself. And that was not the case. It was the opposite. And I felt very humbled in that. And I just had to sit with the fact that I can't always will myself to get through something. Sometimes there's not enough will in our humanness to push past a problem that we are currently experiencing. And so I got off the phone with my psychiatrist after selecting a medication, and I just was the most anxious I've ever been probably in my whole life. Just committing to something new after just really bad experiences was terrifying. And I was like, I can't do this again. I can't go through the intense migraines and the dizziness and the nausea and not being able to eat and just feeling sad and feeling very alone in this. So I called my sister because my sisters are my best friends, and all of my sisters in one way or another have dealt with mental health, whether it's been anxiety or depression, something along those lines. And so I knew that they would understand. And I called her, and we were on the phone for 3 hours, and I just kept saying, you know, I don't understand why God's doing this to me. I feel like he's left me. I feel like he has taken something from me that was helping my life to accomplish what he needed me to accomplish. And I don't understand why he would do that. It doesn't seem like a good thing to do, but he says that he's a good God. And I've always known that to be true. And I was like, I'm terrified. I can't do this. And she just said, first of all, the Lord is still with you, whether your circumstances in life are terrible or whether you feel like you're on top of a mountain. And second, I think God is calling you to action right now. And I think you've been letting yourself sit in pity, and you've been calling it sadness.
Ooh.
And I love my sister for that, because she just has always called me out in the most loving way when I needed to hear things like that. And it just hit me that I had been upset with God, very upset with him for weeks, months even, because I thought I deserved better. I thought I had earned a way out of the trial that I was going through, because I had been patient and I had been in the Word and I had been praying. And if anyone were to get a way out, I felt like I should get a way out. It had been so hard. And I'd really been upset, and I told myself that if I got upset enough at God, he would change the situation. If I could show him how sad I was, how, you know, I'm so sad, and I know you love me, so if you see how sad I am, you're going to change that. But I think that's the difference between worldly relationships and our relationship with God is, I think, as a sister, as a parent, as a husband or a wife, you see your loved one in pain that's connected to worldly things, and I would do anything to get them out of it, even if it's not biblical, even if it's not instilling a sense of patience or peace. But God doesn't do that. He doesn't compromise. He doesn't compromise his plan for our comfort. He doesn't allow hard things to change the outcome of what he's doing, because it's just too good. And
did you hear what you just said? He doesn't compromise our what did you say? Comfort for
his plan for
Whoa. That's huge and so true. And I love what you said. And I think even as students and friendships, and we'll do anything and parents will do anything to get their kids out of trouble or out of, and you said, even if it's not good for them, even if it's not even like maybe against the law. I mean, it's like, we will do anything to get people, we'll lie, we'll cover, we'll take, and that is such an amazing point to say, God didn't allow, or God didn't make your brain not work the way that it was. We live in a fallen world. Yep. And that's why things don't work the way they're supposed to work, right? In heaven, we'll be fully restored and fully healed and fully perfect. But on this earth, there's going to be mental health. Mental health problems. There's going to be disease. There's going to be sickness. There's going to be trials. There's going to be pain, discomfort. And God doesn't always just swoop in and make it better. And I say that too for my nervous breakdown. Like, I absolutely believe God could have in a moment healed me to where I did not have back-to-back panic attacks anymore. But I walked through it and he was right there with me. And then it was like I was able to experience his promises alive and action in my life. And so you got on this new medication.
Yeah.
It was very scary. It was anxiety producing, and it worked.
Yeah.
That's so you had to go through another dip, another dark trail, and so what do you want people to hear on the other side? Because there are so many people listening that are on an antidepressant right now, maybe even on some medicine for OCD, and they might feel a little anxious going, oh my gosh, I don't want what happened to Cindy to happen to me. Like, what do I do? What do you want people to know about the fact that this was a really hard 6 or plus months for you with this medication journey?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I totally understand the feeling of being anxious when you hear about other people's situations that have gone horribly wrong. I think that's a huge part of my OCD personally, is I hear of scary things, bad things. But the best piece of advice I've gotten on that is that things in the world can be scary, but it doesn't mean that they're actively happening to you. So I would just say to shut that down right now, because God has a completely different plan for every one of our lives. And just because this was part of mine doesn't mean it's going to be part of yours in any way. But also I would say that this experience has allowed me to understand the love of God and his promises for my life in a significantly deeper way than ever before. I actually just read something this morning that said you can hear the promises of God, but until you experience what they're talking about, you will never fully understand that part of who he is. You can hear that he's the light in the darkness, but until you're in the darkness and he has to become your light, you don't know what that means. Truly, you hear it and it's great and it's encouraging. And if I ever fall there, he'll get me. But what happens when you do fall there? You have to truly trust that he has still got you in that space, and the promises of God and the character of God becomes very real because you're living in it. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage people just that no matter what happens, bad or good in your life, God is using that to press himself into you. It's not him moving away. I think it's an opportunity for us to move closer to him. And so although it's scary and nobody wants it to happen to them, sometimes I think that us conquering the things that scare us is the best way to truly grow and to get to know God on a personal level. And I've just learned so much from this season. I don't think I'd want to relive it, but
don't take me back.
Yeah. I'm glad that I'm slowly starting to progress into the other side. And I still have hard days. I still have bad days, regardless of if a medication is working. I mean, a medication is not a fix all. It's not. I take this pill and my life is amazing. There's still hard things that are happening, and I still struggle with OCD on medication. It doesn't fully take it away, but I think it's the hard times that really have shown me, first of all, to be grateful for the space that I'm in now, to not take it for granted, and also to not allow myself to get to a space where I believe that I deserve any sort of gifts. I'm just a lot more thankful, and I think humbled by the entire situation than I was before.
It makes you realize that when things are going well, how easy it is to get comfortable again.
Yep.
And, I've had plenty of setbacks. I call them aftershocks when I have panic attacks after the initial nervous breakdown for me. And I always look back on those moments and like, man, like they say that panic attacks don't last forever, but they leave a forever imprint on your soul. And I think that every time you go through one of those dark valleys again, it reminds you of who God is, how faithful he is, but then also it gives you a deeper level of empathy and compassion for the people that are going through this. It's almost like a reminder, like Sydney, Christy, there are people that are going through this exact same thing that you're going through right now. And if you just never struggled with this ever again, first of all, pride could really creep into your life. Second of all, would you forget? Would you forget how painful it really is to go through this? And, I don't talk about this super openly, but, I have like a bonus chapter in my book where I talk about getting off my antidepressants. And it's like the untold story that nobody understands. And when we were off air, I was like, oh man, like you cold turkey, like everybody knows don't cold turkey an antidepressant, right? Like, so please hear us, get a second opinion. Don't just stop taking your medication. And the reason why is, I'm not a doctor, but I have done some study and some education on this, but it alters your brain chemistry. So when your body is used to firing like that with the medication, and then all of a sudden you take it away, it puts your brain chemistry in like disarray, right? And so I had something called brain zaps, and it felt like electrical shocks were hitting me at random spaces. And you said that you had very, very similar things. I had intense vertigo, felt like I was going to vomit. And I remember calling my doctor and saying, what is this? Like, what is happening? This is, I don't know if it was worse, but it was equal terrible to the panic and anxiety that I experienced. And he's like, well, yeah, that happens. If you don't want to go through it, you could just stay on it. We can try again next year. And I'm like, try again next year, And so I wonder if maybe just you and I having this conversation is a way to bring light to the fact that medication is a beautiful gift from God, and it needs its proper place. People need to understand that it can very much help you, and it's serious. Like, don't just pop it like candy. If there's another route that you can take before, which you did. And that's what I love your story is you went through therapy, there's so many things you tried before you got to this space, and then it worked. And I think that's a beautiful success story of how antidepressants and medication should be used properly. Work through the stuff. Because I remember my primary care said, hey, I'm going to give you this medication, and it's going to help you. But if you don't get to the root of the problem that's going on in your life, you're going to just up it until I've given you all the medicine I can give you, and it's no longer going to help you anymore. So it's this but like we got to do both, right? And it's what I love about you too. And I think this next generation, Gen Z has a hard time talking about their feelings. And if they do, they're maybe texting it and they're not maybe saying it out loud, or they have more courage to say that they're having a bad day by snapping it to somebody. But then when they sit in person, it's like, I'm good. Everything's fine. I'm okay. Because we've lost the art of communication. We've lost the art of loving and coming alongside one another. Before we went online, I was telling you about our Soul Shepherd initiative, and you said this beautiful thing. You're like, this is going to work because God's design is community, and community works. So talk a little bit about just the loneliness of being in this. And like, you hear this beautiful story about how you called your sister and she lovingly rebuked you. But like, what would it look like to be real about what's happening and be honest and communicate with people when you're feeling these things, and allowing people to step alongside of you and walk with you?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I've just been tremendously beyond all reason, with nothing that I've done in my own power, blessed with the people that are surrounding me. I have 3 sisters. They're my best friends in the whole world. They are all women of faith, And that in itself is kind of a miracle that my whole family walks together with Jesus. It's the most beautiful blessing I think I could have ever received. But I think just finding community in Christ is extremely important because, like you were saying, if you don't, I think all of our problems at the root are a problem that we have with God in some way. Whether we don't, I think it's usually a problem of trust. I don't trust that you're going to get me through this. I don't trust that you can handle this. I don't trust that your goodness is truly good, or that it's all going to be okay because you say that you are good and you are all-knowing, and the plans that you have for me are to prosper me and not to harm me. And at least in my life, I can't speak for everyone, but my problems have always been a root of me not trusting what the Lord is going to do in my life in some way. And the majority of the things that I've struggled with are because I didn't believe that the character of God was going to come through in the end and really carry me the way that thought I needed to be carried through these situations. But when you sit with people of faith, they can remind you of those things. And instead of, oh, you should just, listen to meditation, or you should just take some magnesium, or those are all great things. And I think I do those things. So I'm not saying that they're wrong, but they're not getting to the root of the problem. And whatever that is for you, I would highly recommend talking it out loud, because I think that Satan loses power and darkness loses power when you speak out loud. If you say something out loud, it's out there. People, they hear it too, and they can remind you in hard times of what you said before and the conversations that you've had, and you come out of hiding when you speak. So I would highly recommend having deep conversations with people that you can trust. And it doesn't have to be someone your own age. It can be anyone. I think there's power and connection and wisdom from every generation as well. And it doesn't have to be a school friend or a work friend. I've found a lot of wisdom and peace in people 70 years old and people 17 years old. And I think all of them have experiences that God has walked them through that we need to hear.
Hey friends, I just wanted to take a moment to interrupt to let you know that the Fearless Tips and Talks podcast is part of a ministry called Fearless Unite. Our mission is to help you find freedom from fear and anxiety in a world that feeds it. We are rolling out a new initiative called Soul Shepherd, which is a mental health advocacy movement in our community. We are very serious about decreasing the mental health crisis that we are facing. And we're going to do this first by starting with teenage girls, one body, soul, and spirit at a time. If you want to learn more about our Soul Shepherd initiative, go to fearlessunite.com/Soul Shepherd. This will also be linked in our show notes. Now, back to the interview.
So I have a little story, if that's okay for me to tell it. But it was at one of the lowest points that I was at before starting medication. And I was just really struggling with my OCD. I was struggling with school. I had an internship that my university had already accepted and was being approved. And they denied it, which pushed back my graduation into the late summer. So I walked, but I don't have a degree right now. Because I still have to have an internship. And, it was honestly kind of devastating to me because I'd worked so hard to graduate, with my class, and I'm going to be done by this time. And that plan was completely foiled by something that was out of my control. And so I was trying to find a job, and I was struggling with my mental health, and I just felt so out of it. But I went on a walk with my sister. It started raining right in the middle of the walk, and I was like, I can't even get a conversation in because the world is just against me right now. So we run to my car, and I'm just like, everything in life is going wrong right now, but it's going to be fine. And my sister just looked at me and she said, why do you always feel like you have to make your pain positive. And why do you always feel like you have to spin everything to be good? Because, I mean, yes, God has a good plan for all of our lives, but it doesn't mean that the darkness of this world is something that he loves. I don't think God, loves death, and he doesn't love mental health disorders, and he doesn't love violence. And there are so many of these things that, are going to be restored one day, and they might not be restored right now. But I think she said, you need to let God work in this, but you don't have to be in love with the circumstances that you're in.
Great advice.
And I kind of just stared at her, because I think as a Christian, I've always been told God is doing something good in your life. And that's very true. But I took that and I twisted it into what's happening to you is good. But I don't know if that's always the case. I've had friends, lose their kids to cancer. And those, things like that, I'm just like, that's just not, cancer is not a good thing, but what God is doing through it is so good and beautiful. And there is going to be restoration in that. But that was just a conversation that changed my life. And because, I was open to speaking to people about what was going on, mostly because I was so low. I was like, I've got to talk to people. But that's a great place to be, because I think you find a lot of love there and a lot of people who want to talk to you. And I've had so many people say, I needed to hear that. And it turned away from something about me to also this other person that, from hearing my struggle, it was helping them go through something too. Yeah. So I think that being open has a lot of positives. It helps you see different perspectives that you don't want to see or that you can't. But it also is a blessing to other people to just hear that life is hard for you too. Yeah. Because I don't think we get that in today's world very often.
Where do you think you learned that you're supposed to turn your pain into positivity?
I think, I don't know. It's always been a problem for me. I've always tried to be a positive person, mostly because I think my mind works in a negative fashion, especially with OCD. It's, scary things, hard things, things that terrify me. And so if I can just be positive about it all the time, maybe that will go away. I think I've always tried to be the light. I've always heard, be a light, which also great advice. But we have to remember that the Lord is the light within us. We are not in ourselves as a human. We can't stand alone as a light to the world. It's the Holy Spirit that works in us. And so I think we have to remember that and not place all of the pressure on ourselves to be positive and be happy. And it's okay to just say this thing's hard, period. That doesn't mean that God can't do something great with it just because it's hard. You don't always have to add, but it's okay to every sentence. You don't always have to say, but I'm fine every time somebody asks. I think I've been trying this year a little experiment to walk into work the way that I feel, to answer questions the way that I feel. It doesn't mean taking out anger or frustration or sadness on other people, but it just means I don't have to be bubbly all the time. If I don't feel like that is where my spirit is at right now, I don't have to be anywhere but where I'm at right now, because God is working through that. And I think if we hide what he's working through, we're taking away the impact of what he's doing in our lives.
What would it look like if, when people came to us and said, how was your day? And the average answer is, oh, I'm fine. I'm doing good. Yeah. I'm okay. What if we were honest? We're like, actually, I'm struggling with my thought life right now. And there's some relationships I'm really struggling. But, my mind's a little not where it wants to be today. What if you were just honest, or I actually had a big fight with my husband last night and I'm still thinking about that. What if we were just honest with how we really feel? So I love that experiment. You have to let us know how it goes. Yeah. How do people respond, to you being just truthful of where you're at? There's something about that pain You've got to spin your pain to positivity. I think maybe church culture makes us feel like God will turn everything around for your good, or, God is always moving. He's always working. And all of those things are true. They're true. And I think we damage people when we don't give them a place to experience the pain, feel the pain, and sit with people in pain. I think because maybe we're so busy, we're a culture of, we got to see self-improvement, that kind of stuff, that maybe we don't allow people to have the pain. And that's why I love that your sister was just like, why do you feel like you have to spin it all of a sudden? And I find myself doing that too, just being a leader and making sure that, but God is good. God is good. And he is good. But what would happen if you just sat with people in their pain? Yeah. And I think even for students, just create pockets of opportunity for people to be real with you. Yep. What would be your biggest piece of advice to if you're talk to the adults now and, you want people to be able to connect with you, what would be the best advice in terms of allowing people to really, truly open up and to get past that, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. What breaks that I'm fine wall down?
I think as a follower of Jesus, an important thing to do is to remember the character of Jesus while he was walking on the earth. So many times I've had my therapist say, when I'm upset over something and I'm like, but I can't be upset because God has put this in my life. And so it's got to be a good thing and I can't be sad. And she'll look at me and go, have you read where Jesus was sitting in the garden before his crucifixion and praying to the Lord? What was he doing? And I'm like, he was sweating blood. He was in distress. He was crying. And I think we take away those aspects of God because, I don't know, maybe it's just easier to think of him as, someone who never felt emotion, because emotions are hard. It's hard to feel sad. It doesn't always feel good. It's hard to feel mad. It's easier to just say that everything's fine. But I think bringing that kind of an attitude into the conversation and remembering that emotions aren't the enemy. I think they can be deceitful. The heart can be very deceitful. But my therapist also always says that if you have an emotion, you have it. It's not something that you can just not have. If you're angry at someone, you are currently angry at that person. Mm-hmm. While you would not like to be angry or sad or depressed or anxious, you are. So what can we do to accept where we're at and then figure out a path to move forward? Mm-hmm. I think a beautiful thing is just, looking at someone and saying that I see that you're there right now. Mm-hmm. I see that. And I don't want you to stay there forever. And so how can I walk with you in what you're currently experiencing to get to a place of peace? Yeah. Because it's so easy to just say, it's going to be fine. But if you haven't experienced walking through that thing before, you don't know what that's like to be on the other side. And it can be very scary. So I think just being real with people, being honest, but also allowing them to feel what they need to feel in the moment.
Yeah. This idea of pride is coming just to my mind right now. And I know for me, part of what I really had to break through coming out of severe panic and anxiety disorder was this idea of, I got it. I'm good. I have everything under control. I'm smart. I'm educated. I'm making good money. I'm good. And so I think pride is something that everyone struggles with. But particularly if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, I think it is something you struggle with even more. Can you talk to me about pride, maybe what it's looked like in your life and how you've learned to humble yourself?
Yeah, I think it's funny that you bring this up because pride has always been something that I've struggled with a lot. And I think even my pride right now is like, don't say that because you don't want people to know that you struggle with pride, which is so prideful. So that's just funny that our mind does that. And I'm like, I don't struggle with that. And it's like, well, you just proved that you do. But I think it's important to also bring the things that we are really struggling with out into the open. First of all, it holds ourselves accountable. And second, it allows other people to maybe realize something about where they're at, or just relate to you in a way that's helpful. And I think I've always struggled with just having a real pull to be prideful. I wouldn't say it's because of my OCD, but I don't think it's helped to just have all these bad things pop into my head. And I think I've always tried to be an exceptionally good person because of that, to kind of off balance this struggle that I was having in my mind. I was always trying to be the best student, the best academic, success in the school, the best Christian in the school, the person who, I was known as the good girl. That was my reputation all through school. And, she doesn't cuss and she doesn't go to parties and she doesn't do this because she's the good girl. And I think I liked it. I liked being the good girl because I liked feeling self-sufficient and I liked feeling good about myself. And that's something that's really hit me the past few years, is that I've lived a lot of my life loving who God is and the idea of God, but really wanting to do life by myself and wanting to just be self-sufficient because I believed that if I had, this plan for my life that was good, I could kind of make it happen and then also enjoy Jesus. But that's not truly walking with him. But this past year, I've started to figure out that sometimes my plans are really bad and they don't work out and they're not successful. And the Lord always plans for every single one of my missteps. And that's something that I cannot do myself. I cannot look ahead and say, that decision's going to be horrible, so I'm going to have to kind of steer my daughter in this way. I just can't do that for myself, and I need him to lead my life because otherwise it's just a train wreck. But pride has been something that I've really leaned into to just feel good. I hated when pastors would say, there's nothing good within us except for Jesus Christ. I was like, well, yes, there is. I'm a good person and I do these good things. And, God is good, but I'm good too. And to let go of that idea has really changed my life because it takes off so much pressure of having to be perfect. Because I'm anything but that. But Jesus, he has everything under control. So if you really want to let go of your anxiety, I would say that fully surrendering to Jesus is the first step to that. And that comes with action steps. It comes with actual things that you take action towards. It's not just, Jesus, I surrender my life to you. It's hard, but it's also the most relieving thing to kind of let him fully in and let your pride just lay to rest. But I will say that I think Jesus has surprised me with his way of humbling me. I always kind of thought he was going to, come in and like sweep my legs and have me fall on my butt. But every time it's been this soft, kind, fatherly way of just sitting me down and saying, I promise that what I have for you is better than what you could have for yourself. And so if you're scared of the plans that God has for you, I'll just encourage you by saying that he is gentle and he wants to be on level with us in the sense that he wants to sit with us and just live life with us. And he's a friend. He's not, this anarchy that's sitting over you. And I've been just pleasantly surprised by the way that God chooses to humble just in my personal life. It's been really beautiful to see.
I think the true definition of pride, I think when we think of pride, we think of people that are like super arrogant and, are just maybe mean and aggressive. And really the way that I feel like I've been taught pride in my life is just self-sufficiency. When I think I know better, when I don't bring the Lord in to my decisions and my actions and my plans. And I love how you just so beautifully described how our Father is to us. He's a friend. He's gentle. He's kind. He leads. He comforts. He encourages. So I think, friends, if there's anything other than that you're feeling, chaos, just frustration, fear, those are not from the Lord. And so I think you so beautifully described what it looks like to be humble and to be humbled. And sometimes he doesn't cause, but he'll allow these things to happen in our life to reposition us so that we won't be self-sufficient, that we will fully rely on him. And I think we can get really good at tricking ourselves into thinking, that we are relying on God when in reality, we're not at all. As we close out, Sydney, there's just been such great wisdom that you've shared. Thank you for being vulnerable with your darkness. I truly believe that this conversation of medication doesn't get talked about enough, and people's experiences through it and in it. And again, I love how you said that's your story. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen to anybody else, but that we do need to have more honest conversations, especially with Gen Z. Let's not run to the medication first. Let's run to Jesus, and Jesus will guide us and lead us into our plan of healing. And so I love that you were able to communicate that. I love that you're on a new medication now that's working, and we're going to pray that continues. And I feel like your faith is stronger through the discouragement, through the darkness that you had to walk through. And I think that you've come up a new Sydney. Every time you fall, you pick yourself back up and you try again and you learn something new. And it sounds like that's exactly where Jesus has you right now. Yeah. As we close out, is there anything else that you feel like you need to say to our community?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it all, but I'm just excited to, just for this to go out and for people to understand that they're not alone in their mental health struggles, and they're not alone in their other struggles, and if they struggle with pride, and if they struggle with their medication right now, and if they're just struggling in life, that we're really all in this together. Amen. And no one is alone. And so I hope that's just an encouragement to those listening today.
You are a huge encouragement. And part of this series that I love so much is you touched on whether you're 17 or 70, you can learn from anyone. And every time you sit in this seat, I learned from you. And I'm so thankful for that, because I believe God is using your voice to help people find healing and hope. And I'm so thankful for that. So thank you for coming back. Thank you for being vulnerable. If you'd like, you can pray over whoever's listening right now. Yeah. And I would love that.
Sure. Dear Lord, I just thank you so much for this time that I've had today with Christy, and just with others that we don't know yet and can't identify with yet, but just love in our hearts. And I thank you that you are steadfast in every season. I thank you that you just always have a better plan for us than we have for ourselves. And I thank you that you're going to come and restore this world, and every single thing that has been sad and hard is going to be undone one day. There's just so much hope in that, and so much peace, just knowing that one day everything is going to be at peace, and we will get to walk with you for eternity. I just pray for the hearts and the minds of everyone who comes across this podcast, that they will be encouraged, they will not feel alone, And most importantly, that they will just decide to fully surrender and walk with you in the belief that you have their situation completely under control, and that their life and their story is beautiful, even if right now it's really, really hard. We love you, and we just thank you for who you are and how you love us. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Fearless Tips and Talks. We hope you enjoyed the insights and advice shared today. If you love what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd also really appreciate it if you would take a moment to rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continuing to allow us to bring the best content possible to you. Hey, and we want to hear from you. Check out the show notes and use the fan mail feature labeled "Send us a text message" to share your thoughts, ask questions, or let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Remember, a life of no fear isn't the goal, but you can learn to fear less. We hope this podcast helps you achieve that. See you next time.